hello. My name is Helen Bryan and I'm part of the team here at Wildlife Worldwide. I am a tour leader and also part of the product team when I'm in the UK. And tonight I'm here to host Mr. Christopher Breen, our founder, our managing director. He is a man that really doesn't need an introduction at all. And look at that blush. He's going to be all bashful now.
And you're so embarrassing.
That's what I'm here to do, embarrass you. Now, before I hand over to Chris, I'm just going to advise that if you would like to pose any questions during the presentation, please do so using either the chat or the Q&A that you can see on your screen. I might answer them as we go along. Otherwise, questions will be posed to Chris at the end. So we are here tonight to talk about Costa Rica. Mr. Breen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Well, look, thank you very much, guys, for joining us this evening. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be talking to you about Costa Rica, a country which, to be perfectly honest, until last year, I hadn't been to. I'm lucky enough to have traveled to many, many places around the world, as I know many of you have too. And I had been asked regularly to go to Costa Rica over the years by various people. And for one reason or another, just simply couldn't fit it into my schedule. Last year, I took the opportunity to go, and I have to say, I can't believe that I hadn't been before, although I know all the reasons why. But I just can't believe that I hadn't been previously. It really is one of the most wonderful, wonderful places you can possibly visit. So what I'm going to do this evening is talk through the key places that I visited on my trip. Making use of many of my images, but also in advance, I will thank both Emma in her office and also Nick Garbutt for their assistance with images, in case I forget to thank them at the end. But it's a fabulous, fabulous country. It is a small country. It sits between Panama, which is to its south, and Nicaragua to its north, and it's about the size of Belgium. Most people say that most countries and most places in countries are about the size of Wales. In this particular case, it's about the size of Belgium. It's easy to fly around the country. There is a good road network, so it's easy to self-drive, and lots of people enjoy self-driving. There is a spine of mountains which you can't see on the map. This is a very topographical map, but the spine of mountains runs from the northwest of the country all the way down to the southeast, and it marks a pretty clear definition between the Caribbean coast on the northern side and the Pacific coast on the southern side. And it makes things interesting because there's certain wildlife, species of birds particularly, that you'll find in the highlands, and therefore stuff that you'll find particularly at much lower altitudes. The mountains are anywhere between about 500 meters and 2,000 meters plus above sea level. And what you can see, as I say, is very dependent upon the elevation and its proximity to the coast. But the coast is fabulous, whether you're on the Caribbean side of the coast or whether you're on the Pacific side of the coast. It's a country that's got lovely people, of course, as you would imagine, great food, there's great accommodation, there are super guides, and fantastic wildlife. There is really a lot to offer. All trips are likely to begin in San Jose. It's a big city, as you can see from this photograph. It's potentially an interesting city. There are some interesting buildings and so on. This is the National Theatre. But for me, I have to say, it's just a city. and I much prefer being out in the wilderness. Being in the wilderness is what really floats my boat. It pushes all of the right buttons for me, being out in the fresh air and with binoculars and camera in hand, and having an opportunity to photograph things. But we have to start in San Jose. And what we do is we make use of a very nice hotel just on the outskirts of the city, a hotel called Hotel Bougainvillea, which has really rather beautiful gardens, and it's a great place from which to begin a trip. The gardens, as I say, are lovely. The likelihood is that you may well feel jet lagged, and an early start, I would suggest, is recommended. To take an early morning bird walk in the gardens. The gardens are extensive with lots of wonderful bird life. And there's a tremendous range of things that you can see, including some great birds. This is a mottled owl, which nests in the gardens. We had all sorts of lovely things from swifts and wood swallows to warblers and a whole range of other things when I was there last year. And at night time, there are some pools that you can visit after dark to begin to practice your frog photography on. And frog photography in Costa Rica it would appear quite a big thing because there's such a fabulous array of frogs of all different shapes and sizes and colors, as you'll see as we go through this presentation. So really, as I say, what I'm going to do is talk you through a trip that I did towards the end of last year. To begin with, I'm going to go up to the Caribbean shore. I'm going to go up to Tortuguero National Park, and from there we will go to Arenal volcano, which is to the west, as you can see. Immediately south of Arenal volcano is a place called Monteverde. It's not marked on the map, but it's just south of Arenal, so we'll go there. Then we're going to go up to Cano Negro to the north, and then in a southwesterly direction, we'll go down to Tamarindo, and finally, we'll go down to the Osa Peninsula and to Corcovado National Park. So, beginning with Tortuguero, it's a great wilderness reserve. It's a national park. It's on the Caribbean coast. It's a little bit south of the Nicaraguan border, and between the park itself and the border with Nicaragua is another extensive area of wilderness and wilderness reserve. Then you come to the Nicaraguan border, and on the other side of the border is another extensive wilderness area. So it's part of a huge network of wilderness preserves. Perhaps to some degree, as this image illustrates, this is obviously heading up the coast. You can get into the park either by air, you can fly in and out, or you can drive in. On the trip that I did last year, I drove in and I flew out. If you're driving in, you drive over that range of mountains that I mentioned, over the Central Highlands from San Jose. It's a very, very pleasant drive. It's about a 3-hour drive or so with a coffee stop en route, and there's always a chance that if you keep your eyes open, you'll see some of the local wildlife. This was my first sloth, which actually was taken on an iPhone from a moving vehicle, so I don't think that was too bad. Obviously, I would have preferred the first sloth to have been in a more forested environment, but it was kind of an interesting shot nonetheless. And my second was shortly after, when we'd stopped for a coffee, with this one taking shelter, I think, probably from the sun underneath this corrugated iron roof. There's something about sloths, isn't there? They always look incredibly pleased with themselves. And as I say, even though this isn't the ideal place to find one. So whether you fly into Tortuguero or whether you drive into Tortuguero, you will transfer to your lodge by boat. It will take anywhere between half an hour and 45 minutes or so, depending on what you see along the way. And you'll pass the small town of Tortuguero that's grown up in the area to some extent to serve the tourists. I suspect there was a fishing community here, or has been a fishing community here for many years, but there's a few more people here now, of course, because of the tourists. Some of the houses are very interesting and colourful, and then you will pull up alongside your lodge. And in this case, this is Tortuguero. It's not Tortuguero Lodge, I beg your pardon. This is a lodge called Moamba Lodge, which is where I stayed. And you can see, of course, the Caribbean Sea at the top of that shot. It has a beautiful swimming pool. It's got lovely wooded grounds. You can walk through the lodge and onto the beach on the other side. And we'll have a look at that again in a moment. The lodge grounds are magnificent. It's one of a number of lodges in the area. There are some other really super lodges, and in and around the lodge, you can expect to see plenty of wildlife. There are a number of primates. This is just one of them. This is a mantled howler monkey in a classic pose, sleeping on a branch. It has a fabulous howling call that reverberates across the forest. You may well see these beautiful guys. These are raccoon kits. There were 3 kits and a mum, I presume, that we were seeing regularly in the grounds of the lodge. They are very, very beautiful. They were hiding behind this concrete wall. But magnificent animals. This is northern raccoon, which is actually found throughout the country. There's some beautiful birds in the lodge grounds too, of course, as you can imagine. This is a female summer tanager, and this is Montezuma's Oropendula, which nests in the grounds of the lodge. That creates a beautiful, long, shaggy nest. When I was there, we had a couple of very sunny days, and mid-afternoon on one or other of those days, it poured with rain for half an hour, 45 minutes. It then cleared, and we were off, up and out and about again. So in Costa Rica, you do need to be expecting rain at any day or at any time of day, even if you're there in peak season, peak sunny season, peak dry season, I should say. Of course, you're here for the wildlife, and that's exactly what I went for. And you can enjoy it in various ways. Here in Tortuguero, you can enjoy it by boat. You can go out on kayaks. You can go out on foot during the day and at night time. But the waterways are beautiful, and the waterways are, if you like, the key to enjoying the wildlife here in Tortuguero. And the waterways are stunning. The trees are very beautiful, creating amazing reflections. As with any wildlife location and wilderness location, the nicest times to be out, really, particularly for photography, are early mornings and late afternoons. And what can we see? Well, you can see rather lovely birds like this. This is boat-billed heron. In this particular case, with his eyes shut. You'll see another boat-billed heron a bit later on. A female great curassow, and this particular the females are have this lovely sort of chestnutty color and more speckled coloration on the face. Lots of caimans too, American caiman. Either you'll see them just the nose of the caiman and just the eyes, or you might see them out lying on a log. It's the sort of thing that you will see throughout Central and South America, of course, caimans. It seems to me that it's possible to get particularly close to them here in Tortuguero. The iguanas in Tortuguero fascinated me. This is green iguana. Curiously, they're not always green. In fact, I think it's only the young ones that are green, so maybe they're slightly misnamed. I'm not sure. But they are often seen very, very high up in the almost in the canopy of the trees. Perhaps I should have expected that, but for some reason or other, I didn't, and I found it fascinating. This is a basilisk, also known as a Jesus Christ lizard, because it runs across the water at high speed. And we saw a number of those when we were there. And an anhinga, or darter in African money, of which there are many. Lots of terrapins too, of course. And one of the key reasons why people come to Tortuguero, surprise, surprise, there's a clue in the name, because tortuga in Spanish means turtle. So people are coming here to see turtles, and it's one of the reasons why the park is a park, because this very, very beautiful Caribbean coastline plays host to turtles, particularly green turtles and also leatherbacks. The green turtles come here to nest between July and October, and the leatherbacks come here to nest between March and July. So this is a Caribbean coast feature. But of course, those turtles species also nest on the Pacific coast too. The green turtles go to the Pacific coast between December and February, and the leatherbacks go to the Pacific coast between October and March. So pretty much any month you decided to come to Costa Rica, you would be able to see turtles. In this case, as I say, in Tortuguero National Park, we're looking at between July and October for greens and March to July for leatherbacks. Last year in 2024, there was a huge number of turtle nests in Tortuguero. Approximately 10,000 nests were recorded along the shore last year. Pretty impressive. Going out at night time is a really big thing in Costa Rica, and going out at night time, you will go out with a naturalist guide. You would begin from your lodge by boat. You would travel to a suitable trail, and then with your guide, you would walk with torches and or head torches, looking for all sorts of interesting and exciting nocturnal wildlife, including, of course, frogs. This one will be familiar to many of you. This is a red-eyed tree frog. Perhaps less familiar is the green and black poison dart frog. And perhaps less familiar still is the blue jeans frog. And each of these is really quite tiny. Possibly 2 or 3 centimeters long in the case of this particular frog, perhaps a little bit bigger, but you really need to know what you're looking for. You really need to know where to look, and in an ideal world, be with an excellent guide. Otherwise, you'll simply miss them. And a warning that the next picture is a photograph of a snake. I do appreciate that not everybody likes looking at snakes. But at night time, there's also a great possibility of seeing one or two snakes. In this particular case, this is a green vine snake, common in Tortuguero. So from Tortuguero, we're going to go pretty quickly, in fact, or rather, I should say, on a short visit to the Arenal area and to Arenal volcano. But in the first case, I just need to obviously remind you where it is. You can see there northwest of San Jose. But Arenal is a busy place. It's pretty touristy. The volcano itself is still beautiful to see, of course, but it is a touristy location. The town nearby Arenal is a place called Fortuna, which has some very nice restaurants and bars, but it's a busy place. There are, of course, some lovely trails in and around the area and some lovely viewpoints of the volcano. There are some very nice hanging bridges to walk across and get great views of the surrounding area, upriver and downriver. And they seem to be putting in more of this type of thing, but there's plenty of lovely trails to walk on. And there is plenty of very attractive, very nice wildlife. In this case, many of you will be familiar with these, I'm sure. This is a white-faced coati. And there's lots of other lovely things to see too. But from a personal point of view, having only been to Arenal once and having been to Fortuna once, therefore, I'm delighted that I'm delighted that I went. But I think for a future trip, I would consider it more to be a staging post for other locations rather than a place that I would go back to and spend 2 or 3 nights. I might spend a night en route between Tortuguero, for example, and Monteverde, or Tortuguero and Cano Negro, but I probably wouldn't spend more than a night here. Immediately south of Arenal is Monteverde. It's not marked on the map. Apologies for that. It does take a little while to get to Monteverde from Arenal, even though the distance, as the crow flies, so to speak, is not very far. But it takes a reasonable period of time to get here, a couple of hours, purely and simply because of the roads and because of the mountain roads, basically. But it's well worth a visit because if you hit it right, then you stand a very good chance of seeing this rather beautiful bird, the resplendent quetzal. Now, it's a cloud forest, Monteverde cloud forest. So you need to expect inclement weather. And when I was there last year, I had inclement weather. Beyond belief, it simply cascaded down with rain from my arrival to my departure. So I wasn't lucky enough to see the Monteverde area looking like this, which is what it can look like on the days when the weather is fine. Nor did I see it looking like this, which is also beautiful. It's quite illustrative, I guess, of the fact that the Monteverde area, you can see there's been quite a bit of deforestation here. This isn't actually in the Forest National Park, on the outskirts of the Forest National Park. But it is an area of fairly extensive farmland, as well as being forested, with pockets of forest, if you like. But nonetheless, it is a most beautiful place, and driving in this area I found really extremely enjoyable, despite the weather. There are some fabulous forest walks, and a visit to Monteverde Cloud Forest National Park, I think, is essential if you're in central Costa Rica. It's a place which I enjoyed enormously. Um, Actually, on my visit, I wasn't lucky enough to see quetzal, but I think that's primarily because of the rain on the day that I happened to be there, and I was only able to spend a morning there. So I wasn't lucky. The quetzal picture which I just showed you and some others that you'll see are courtesy of Nick Garbett. But I was unlucky, and I'm aware that I was unlucky. The accommodation in the area is plentiful, and in and around the accommodations, of course, there is also lovely wildlife, and you can walk out of the accommodations and see amazing wildlife just in the grounds of the accommodation, in the grounds of the lodges. You can see, for example, kinkajous. This is a medium-sized mammal, which is nocturnal, found in the trees. It's found across Costa Rica. You might also see this rather fine-looking mammal, a bushy-tailed olingo. This is found primarily in the northern and eastern part of the country. Again, it's arboreal and nocturnal, but it's another one of the fine mammals that you can see in Costa Rica. The birding in this area, as I said, is absolutely superb. This is a golden-browed Chlorophonia. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. And then again, resplendent quetzal, which has got to be on every birder's list of birds to see. It really is an absolute cracker, and these shots of Nick's, I have to say, make me feel like I want to throw my camera away, perhaps, or return to Costa Rica again to try and get something similar. Maybe I should do that. Emerald toucanet, another of the wonderful birds that you find in Costa Rica, but only find in certain parts of the highlands, as is the case with this lovely acorn woodpecker, also only found in the highlands. And a health warning again, I'm going to show you a photograph of a scorpion next. So if you don't like scorpions, look away. Because one of the key things to do in Costa Rica at almost every location that you're likely to visit is to get out at nighttime, as we did in Tortuguero, getting out at nighttime to look for scorpions, to look for amazing spiders, tarantulas, to look for these beautiful owls. This is another mottled owl, as it happens. Again, to look for more frogs is to be enjoying Costa Rica at its absolute best. So, Cano Negro is north of Arenal volcano, the Arenal volcano area, I should say. And it's very close to the Nicaraguan border. It's about 2 hours drive, or perhaps a little bit less, from Fortuna, which is the town that you stay in when you're in and visiting Arenal. Cano Negro is a wetland. It has a large central lagoon. It's a wetland reserve, I should say. It has a large central lagoon. It is an absolute gem in Costa Rica. It's somewhere that I wasn't expecting to feel quite so strongly about, but I thought it was very, very special. And at least one reason why it was very, very special is because almost nobody goes there. I suspect they will do in due course, particularly birders. And here's another shot of a boat-billed heron. Sorry for showing you two shots of boat-billed herons, but I like them both. This is my favorite of the two. But if you have an interest in birds and wilderness, then Cano Negro is without doubt a paradise. There is a wonderful tented camp to stay in here, which is only recently opened. It's a place called Toku Tent Camp. It can accommodate about 16 people. It's built very much in an African safari camp style, I would say. It is around this rather lovely pool, which is actually a natural swimming pool. So you can walk straight out of your tent and you can have a swim in this rather magical pool. It's a tented camp that's actually built on farmland, curiously, but farmland that's being gradually reclaimed for wildlife. And I have to say, they really are doing a most tremendous job. It's magical at night time, this place. The food is absolutely outstanding. The guides here were brilliant. And I think together with my wife, who was with me on the trip, we were amongst the first people to stay at Toku Tent Camp. I know that a number of people have stayed there subsequently, because there was actually an article in the paper recently about Toku Tent Camp, possibly last week or the week before. But it's a magical place, and it's magical because it's actually very close to Cano Negro Lagoon, which is part of the Cano Negro Reserve, which, as I mentioned, is a bird's paradise and needs to be visited for the very best birding, surprise, surprise, very early in the morning or late in the evening. Early in the morning was when I visited. I was only able to make a short visit. I went out with a spectacularly good guide, a lady in her 30s who has never been outside of Costa Rica, who fell in love with birds at a very, very young age. And I would say she's probably one of the best birding guides I've ever been out with. She was an absolute delight to be with, and an absolutely exceptional guide. And on a boat trip, we saw a whole host of wonderful birds, including green and rufous kingfisher, which is a special for the area, Amazon kingfisher, and Prothonotory warbler, which is really one of the most extraordinary names. I looked up the name Prothonotory earlier in the day today, which means, curiously, the principal clerk of a court. Not something I ever knew until I looked on Google today. I'm yet to work out what the link is between the Prothonotory warbler and the principal clerk of a court. So if anybody knows, please feel free to put something in the chat. So that we can come back to that later. I've no idea what the link is. Some other lovely things that we saw: green-collared manakin. We saw gartered trogon, and of course we saw one or two iguanas. Again, high in the trees. This was just one of them. We in fact saw many. They're fearsome-looking creatures, aren't they? But they're really not at all concerning for us, other than simply by their rather extraordinary appearance. So from Cano Negro, we are going to head west to, well, southwest technically, to Tamarindo on the Pacific coast. And you are going to, I'm sure, be wondering why on earth I'm showing you a photograph of people surfing in the sunset, when I'm really here to talk to you about wildlife and wildlife trips. Perfectly reasonable question, of course. Tamarindo is a really super chilled out, surfy town on the Pacific coast. I wish I was a surfer, because I think I would been able to spend an extended period of time here. I have to say, Tamarindo is a lovely place to stop or pause on a wildlife trip, though, and it's well worth it. Not perhaps so much for the surfing, unless you're particularly a surfer, but because there's all sorts of interesting places in and around the Tamarindo area that you can visit that are great for wildlife. There are, of course, some delightful places to stay in Tamarindo. I have to say, Tamarindo is quite a busy place. It's not a big place by any stretch of the imagination. At night time, it's quite busy. But as I say, there are some delightful places to stay. There are some beautiful beaches, but there's also wildlife. That's why I was there. There are, amongst other things, mantled howler monkeys in the grounds of some of the hotels. But there is a lovely estuary nearby, which offers some great birding. And more significantly, there are lengthy beaches that are used by the turtles at nesting time. Nesting time, as I mentioned before, is between October and March. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of green turtles and leatherback turtles that come to shore to nest. And as I say, there's plenty of other interesting parks to visit as day trips from here too. But it is a really interesting place. It's a nice place, and it's a place well worth visiting. So from Tamarindo, we are going to head down to the Osa Peninsula. And this is where we are holding the Festival of Wildlife in July 2027. It's a long time away, 2.5 years away. Yikes, it will come around quick enough. But the Osa Peninsula really is the jewel in Costa Rica's crown. It's remote, it's wild, it's beautiful. It is a great peninsula with a spectacular forest and a coastline that's truly stunning. The wild world here is fabulous for everything from incredible forest and of course all of its associated wildlife. This is a lovely shot actually of Alex Hyde's of one of the many beautiful trees with its buttressed root system. A shot of Nick Garbutt's of scarlet macaws. This is the most likely place that you will see scarlet macaws, and you'll see them in plenty. You can see them in 1 or 2 other places in Costa Rica, but you'll see them in plenty here in the Osa Peninsula, in and around Corcovado. There is a considerable population of great curassows, large birds, ground birds. I think we looked at one earlier in the presentation. They are about 1 meter long. They're big guys, but there's a good population of them here. Other birds that we might see in the area include things like black-throated trogon, red-crowned woodpecker, one of the special woodpeckers in the area. One of my favorite birds here. I know they're common, and I'm sure many of you have seen them many times. They're common in this part of the Americas, but black hawk, I have to say, I love the raptors and I love the black hawks. I just think they're stunning. They remind me very much of battler eagles in Southern Africa. But of course, there's lots of mammals here as well, and the mammals here are amazing. So these are Central American spider monkeys, and they're common here and regularly seen. Another shot of the same, and another very endearing creatures. As you can see, this one's sheltering from the rain. It's a young one. Its fur is pretty wet, and I imagine it's pretty cold. Almost looks like it's cuddling up to that tree just to keep itself warm. There are plenty of capuchin monkeys. This is white-faced capuchin. These guys seem to have the same remit as the vervet monkeys in Africa, and that remit appears to be to cause as much disturbance as possible by stealing things from unsuspecting wildlife tourists. I'm sure they've got us. They have our card marked, I have no doubt. But then there are other great primates as well. This is mantled howler monkey. We mentioned them previously. Their calls reverberate across the forest. There's Central American squirrel monkeys as well. And I guess closer to the ground, we should see raccoons. And here on the Osa Peninsula, there's two different species of raccoon. There's northern raccoons and there's crab-eating raccoons. And if I'm completely honest, I'm still not sure that I can tell the difference between the two. And even looking in the book, I can't really tell the difference between the two. But on the Osa Peninsula, there are both. Other mammals that we might see when we're here on the Osa Peninsula and when we're at the Festival of Wildlife in 2027 include these guys, collared peccaries, and also Baird's tapir. This is the largest land mammal in Central America. It stands at just over a meter at the shoulder and it weighs about 300 kilos. So it's a big old animal. And we saw these earlier, but these very, very endearing coatis. We should see plenty of those in the forest, and we should see them. They seem to, at least, particularly like foraging near the shore on the coast. One of the things that we might see, if we're particularly lucky, and we have fingers and toes and everything else crossed, is puma. There are pumas on the Osa Peninsula. There are pumas in Corcovado National Park. And there are pumas that are regularly seen in the grounds of Corcovado Lodge. They were seen a few days before I was there last year. And I don't think that was just a case of you should have been here yesterday, because my understanding is that they are seen with some regularity. I completely accept it's unlikely that we will see them, but there'll be quite a few of us there at the festival, and I have my fingers crossed that we'll see them. There is also a possibility, though I haven't put a photograph in here, but there is also a possibility that we could see jaguar. Again, it's unlikely, but it's possible. So fingers crossed, we'll see jaguar and puma at Festival of Wildlife. Or indeed, if you were just to visit the Osa Peninsula and this area outside of coming with us to the festival. Again, another health warning, there's a snake shot coming up. So, as with Tortuguero, as with Monteverde, and other places that I've spoken about, night walks are an important activity. And if you decided not to, if you were staying in one of these lovely lodges and you decided not to do night walks, you would, I would suggest, miss out on a lot of the wonder that the forest has to offer. As with Tortuguero, the night walks in Corcovado work with a local naturalist guide. We'll be walking on forest trails. We'll have head torches and hand torches. And we'll be looking out for all sorts of interesting things like this guy, the eyelash pit viper, and some of the many frogs. And these photographs are courtesy of Emma. This is a polka dot tree frog with its eyes open, and the same chap with his eyes shut. Green and black poison dart frog. Another of the blue jeans frogs. And another red-eyed tree frog. Interesting things to see, and, you know, wonderful reptiles to be able to photograph if the opportunity presents itself. Other things we might see include tent-making bats. I think this is a shot of Nick Garbutt's. But I need to also make special mention, excuse me, of the endearing sloth again. This is a three-fingered sloth. Because during the course of our Festival of Wildlife in July 2027, and as is the case at all of our festivals, we raise money for one of the local conservation organizations. For the festival in 27, we're raising money for an organization called the Sloth Conservation Foundation. And we will have with us a lady by the name of Becky Cliff, Dr. Becky Cliff. She'll be part of our expert team. And it was Becky that set up and it's Becky who runs the foundation. This is the island. This is an island called Cano Island. It is literally just off the Osa Peninsula. It's just off the coast. It's an island nature reserve, and during the course of our festival trip in July 27, we'll be exploring the waters around the island, and we will have an opportunity, should we wish to. Nothing is ever compulsory on our trips, as I'm sure you realize. But there will be the possibility to snorkel and also scuba dive. Not something we've ever offered on a festival trip before. Only if you're qualified, of course, and only if you wish to. There's beautiful corals and so on off the coast here, off this particular island, Cano Island. That's a possibility. It's an island, again, it's an island reserve, but we will be here for the Festival of Wildlife in 2027 at absolutely the perfect time, because this is also whale watching season. So in addition to the land mammals, the amazing birds, the reptiles, the incredible forest, etc., etc., it's also whale watching season, and it's humpback season. This is where humpbacks come to breed and calve. The humpbacks that we will be seeing will have come from the north. We may also see Brooder's whale. We might see pilot whales. We may see other whales as well. This is hopefully what we'll see them doing. We will, when we're going out whale watching, we will be with naturalists who will be making use of hydrophones. So with any luck, we'll be able to listen to the whales as well. We'll be able to hopefully participate in a true citizen science whale watching experience, rather than just having simple observation. Observation is good enough, of course, but if we can participate in citizen science, if we can help identify some of the whales, where they've come from, where they're going to, etc., how frequently they've been in the area, that's an exciting thing to be able to participate in. There are also piles of dolphins in and around the area too. Bottlenose dolphins, spotted dolphins, rough-toothed dolphins, inshore and offshore spinner dolphins further out to sea. So just to recap, I thought I would put in this old map, which I found because I thought it was rather nice, different from many of the modern maps that we see these days. In respect to the festival, we fly into Drake Bay, and with any luck, you can see my cursor and you'll see Drake up here, top left-hand side. So we fly into Drake, and then we take a short road transfer to the coast. I'll mention Puerto Jimenez, which is down on the southeastern side of the Osa Peninsula, because you can also fly into Puerto Jimenez. And if you were staying at a different lodge, one of the other lodges that we work with on some of our tailor-made holidays, and indeed one or two of the group trips, you may well fly into Puerto Jimenez. But for the purposes of this sort of last part of this presentation, I'll concentrate on what we're doing at festival and kind of how we get there. So we fly into Drake Bay, and we take a short road trip from the airstrip to the bay itself, and we jump into a boat because you can only get to Corcovado Wilderness Lodge by boat, and it's a beautiful road trip. It's a boat trip, I beg your pardon. It's about 20 minutes, to get to the lodge. By boat, there are no roads to get to the lodge. For the festival, as I say, we're staying at Corcovado Wilderness Lodge. It immediately adjoins the national park, Corcovado National Park. Corcovado National Park is about 1,000 square kilometers, and this Wilderness Lodge is set. It literally abuts the national park. It's the only lodge that whose land area touches the national park. You can walk directly from the lodge into the national park. They have a vast private wilderness of a couple of 100 acres. The lodge itself has about 30 rooms. They're all slightly different. They are all really lovely. This is one of the rooms in what they refer to as their ocean village. As you can see, it has beautiful views out over the ocean, all very attractively decorated, beautifully appointed from the inside, so no holds barred from that point of view. Lovely place to spend a bit of time during the course of the day, if we will give you enough time, if you're not at presentations or talks or workshops. This is one of the other rooms. This is actually part of what they refer to as their rainforest village, and the inside of one of those rooms. And of course, as you can imagine, the lodge itself has all of the amenities that you would expect, including a lovely bar overlooking the ocean. There's another bar overlooking a pool. It has a spa. It has all of the usual stuff that you would expect from a lodge of this standard. And for those of you who've been to festival previously, you'll be familiar with the fact that during the course of the festival, we do talks, we do presentations, we will do workshops, and we raise money for a local foundation, which, as I said, is the Sloth Conservation Foundation. So just to highlight, if you like, at that side of things, what we'll be doing at festival: forest walks, night walks, whale and dolphin watching. We'll be able to see whales and dolphins actually from the shore, even from our rooms. Birding, we'll be mammal watching. There's snorkeling and scuba diving included if you would like that. And of course, we have an expert team of people that will be with us, including a whole group of local naturalist guides. So I will be there. Brett Sharman will be there, who's one of our photographers, who many of you will know. Emma will also be there. The great Helen Bryan will be there. We will have Mike Dilger with us, which will be fantastic. We will have, oh look, there's Helen. We will have Becky Cliff, who you will see, and we will also have the lovely Nick Mackman. So we've got the most fantastic team of people, and we're really, really excited to be sharing that trip with you, and hopefully some of you will, or many of you, who knows, hopefully some of you will come with us. Helen is now back on board, and if I can, I am going to pass over to Helen in the first instance by showing you once again our map, Helen.
Thank you so much, Chris. Honestly, you had me at whales, pumas and jaguars in the same sentence. You know what floats my boat.
Oh yeah.
But you also had me way before that. You did not have that slide of an oripendula in your presentation when we went through it earlier. That was an absolute humdinger. So yeah, awesome. Honestly, I mean, crikey, if I wasn't excited about returning to Costa Rica in 2027, I really, really am now. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. It's an amazing place, isn't it? Don't you think?
It is. It really is. So take a well-deserved sip of that Diet Coke that's suspiciously like red wine. And
it is Diet Coke, honest.
And yeah, no, I mean, my word, I'm desperate to go back now. So thank you very, very much. That was superb. Brilliant. Right. So we do have quite a few questions that have been during the presentation, but we also have two very on the ball clients.
Yes, I know what they're going to say.
Yeah, Claire and Andy have come
Yeah.
straight back at you about your warbler. And notice I'm not even going to try and say prothonotary.
Prothonotary warbler. Oh, brilliant.
Prothonotary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's probably the correct pronunciation. I thought you were going to come back on the whales, but I will correct my error. Go for it.
No, so literally Claire and Andy popped up on my screen within about 30 seconds of you posing the question, and their plumage resembles the yellow robes once worn by the clerks in the Roman Catholic Church. And that is where the name comes from. Clearly, your Google wasn't working very well when you tried it earlier. But...
Well, Google it yourself. Google what does prothonotary mean. Anyway, that's great. Thank you very much.
Anyway, thank you, Claire and Andy, once again. Well done. There'll be a cap in the post to you before you know it.
And a £20 note of Helen's.
Right, okie doke. So the reason for coming back to me with a map is that I am about to launch a poll. And that poll will give you information not just on the Festival of Wildlife that Chris has just outlined, but it will also give you the option to perhaps request some travel plans for a few of our other wonderful trips that we offer across the country. We do group trips, we do tailor-made trips, and of course we have our festival. So the poll will mention the festival, obviously. The first of our group trips that it will mention is perhaps the most popular trip that we offer to Costa Rica, which is Costa Rica's Wildlife Wonders. And Chris, if I can just ask you to go back to the map. Yes, please. Sure. That would be lovely. Thank you. Sorry. So in a similar light to Chris, this trip starts in Tortuguero, over on the Caribbean coast, looking for turtles and all the sloths and the basilisks and
sorry.
You're a little bit heavy-handed with that finger, aren't you? Away from the keyboard.
Okay, all right, stand by. Yep, okay. I won't touch it again.
Thank you. It starts in Tortuguero. It then actually comes down, so due south of San Jose that you can see slap bang in the middle of the country on your map here. Between San Jose and the Osa Peninsula is a cloud forested area known as the Monteverde Valley. And that is another spot in which it's possible to find the resplendent quetzal. So we go from Tortuguero back through San Jose and down to the Monteverde Valley. Then we continue. Sorry, Paul has just sent a message saying, is this rehearsed? Clearly not.
I think you know the answer to that, Paul.
Know which Paul that is.
I can make a guess.
GDPR and all that. From the Monteverde Valley, you go down to the Osa Peninsula and we spend the rest of our time there. So it's Tortuguero, Monteverde, Osa. That is an absolute corker. That is our Costa Rica's Wildlife Wonders. Another group trip that we have, cloud forests, jungles and volcanoes. It visits a place called Sarapiqui, which is in the northeastern side of the country, and it is pretty much regarded as the rainforest research station of Latin America. So if you really want to learn about conservation in action, you're going to go there, followed by Arenal, followed by the Nicoya Peninsula where Tamarindo is, and then down the west coast before heading back up into San Jose. So that's cloud forest, jungles and volcanoes. It does a loop of the northern part of the country, essentially. Our trip ideas or our tailor-made itineraries, there is an option to request a travel plan for natural highlights. And that pretty much almost to the letter covers what Chris's itinerary was. From Tortuguero to Arenal, just south of Arenal are the cloud forests of Monteverde for the resplendent quetzal. And then across to the central Pacific coast, Manuel Antonio National Park and Carrara, which again is scarlet macaws, crocodiles, it's dry forest and also the Pacific. And finally, coast to coast is an option, which takes in the Caribbean coast, and the Pacific coast and the highlands in the middle, with some fantastic birding lodges in between. So if you can remember all of that, well done. And if you can go on to the next slide then, please, Chris.
Oh, can I do it now?
You can do it now.
Okay.
Thank you. They step towards your keyboard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the poll. And while I do that, then essentially we will also cover off questions. So, Chris,
Sure.
are you ready?
I think so. It could
Okay,
be frightening.
average temperatures, please. Average temperatures.
Oh, obviously, the higher up you are, the cooler it is. I mean, that's stating the bleeding obvious, as they said on Monty Python. But really, for most of the year, you're going to be looking at about kind of 30 degrees and nice, nice temperatures. You know, it's not. Well, in the forest, of course, it can be a bit oppressive. On the coast, rather less so. But 30 degrees, you know, anywhere between 25 and 32, I would say, probably in many respects, actually, for most of the year. Sunny, of course, you know, the peak time to go is between December and April. And that's kind of the driest time, I think. It's fair to say. But having said that, you've got to expect rain. So, take a light rain jacket with you, kind of pretty much regardless of what time of year you're going. If you're going in the rains, take more than a light rain jacket with you. But certainly if you're going, even if you're going in the dry season, just take a light rain jacket with you. Temperature wise, it's lovely. I think it's absolutely delightful. It's brilliant. Love it. It's a very easy climate to live in, I would say.
Fab. Thank you. We have also had a question with regards to photographic equipment.
Yep.
And I think at that point, or at this point, it's probably worth mentioning as well that we do also offer photographic departures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basis to Costa Rica. Most clients tuning in tonight, I would suspect, are familiar with the dynamic duo that is Nick Garbutt and Alex Hyde. Did you like that?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And they do a Caribbean, photographic.
A Caribbean fiesta.
Yes, although that possibly might be the name of their Panama trip. Oops. They do a Costa Rica photographic extravaganza, which is always very, very popular. So if you want to learn how to take a photo when it's pouring down with rain in a dark, damp forest, that's the trip for you. But coming back to the question that was actually posed by John, okay, it's a two-part question. What photographic equipment did you take and wish you hadn't?
Oh, that's an interesting.
Firstly, what did you not take but wish
I
had?
Okay, so what did I take and wish I hadn't? Actually, my photography setup is pretty simple. I don't carry all the stuff that Nick and Alex carry, and I don't carry all the stuff that Emma carries or that Brett carries. I take two mirrorless camera bodies, and I take two lenses. I take a 24 to 105 lens, and I take a 100 to 500. I'm very, very pleased that I took both of those. So that I didn't have with me anything that I wish I didn't take. The thing that I wish I did take was more protection for my cameras. I didn't go in the dry season, so I knew what to expect. I knew to expect rain. I went at that was the only time of year I could go. I went in December. I beg your pardon. I went at the middle of November, but it was torrential for some of the time that I was there. And I wish I'd taken more protection for my cameras. I didn't really have the right flash equipment. I'm not a great flash photographer. and I didn't have quite the right stuff, but I will have next time.
Okay.
But as I mean, I'm sure Brett, Emma, Nick, Alex, anyone will tell you that the best setup is the simplest one.
He has just mentioned a rain sleeve. Simple as that.
Well, exactly,
Great
absolutely,
Mount Horace
absolutely.
and in the rain. Simple as
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
One.
And of course, the dumbest thing is I've got them, but I left them behind. But that wasn't deliberate. I left them behind by accident. But I meant to take them, and then when I got there, I found I didn't have them. But hey ho.
Okay.
A shower cap from the hotel, of course, is a um, very useful alternative.
You know,
Um,
I'm not a photographer, but I always carry one of those with me for that same purpose because the client told me
Brilliant.
about it once. So
Yeah,
there
I
we
know.
are, a shower cap. It
Yeah,
does wonders.
yeah.
If I had a couple of extra comments actually, Chris, and then one or two final questions, please. Francis has said you haven't mentioned the hummingbird. How dare you?
Do you know what? I I'm very conscious of that, and I absolutely. So I was going to say to you before we wrapped up, I was going to say, do you realise? And I didn't. So I haven't said it yet because we haven't wrapped up. I was going to say, do you realise that I've done that whole talk without even mentioning a hummingbird?
Because even
Um,
in Hotel Bougainvillea in
I
San
know,
Jose,
I know, I know, I know, I
there's
know.
a number of hummingbirds in the garden, so you must do the early morning walk because you'll be
Yeah, it's
awake.
brilliant. It's absolutely
You'll be
brilliant.
awake
It's
at the
absolutely
last
brilliant.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sacrilege that I haven't mentioned the hummingbird. Yeah, Francis and others, I do apologise. I'm very conscious that I got to the end of the talk without mentioning them. But
The job seen. What can I say? What can?
no, it's rubbish, isn't it? Oh, do you know what? I have to go back. Oh, I am. Yeah.
Okay, one more thing. Daniel has just come in. I feel like we're on Winter Watch or something. Daniel has just contacted us saying the difference between the northern and the crab-eating raccoon is the northern raccoon is more stocky, the crab-eating is more slender. And
Oh,
perhaps it helps if you can see what it's got in its mouth.
well, yeah. But perhaps it also helps if you see the two together.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
right.
that's a stocky one, and that's the one. That one's a stocky one. That's not quite so stocky. That's got to be. Oh, hang on, but maybe he's eaten more than the other one.
Right. Okay. I'm trying to multitask by answering messages as well as talking, which obviously is very difficult. One final question. Caroline asks, "What about mosquitoes?"
Oh, didn't have any issue with insects at all. When I was there, and actually I would have expected to have had an issue with insects,
Yeah.
but really didn't have any. I guess the completely honest answer is that I can't speak for. I can't answer that question in respect of year round because I haven't been at other times of year. But I would have. In an African environment, for argument's sake, or even in an Asian environment, I would imagine I would expect if it's reasonably wet, there's quite a lot of moisture around, I would expect to be hammered by insects. And I didn't have that experience here in Costa Rica.
Good. Okay.
I mean,
Right.
I did have anti-mozzie stuff with me, as you can imagine, because it would be a bit bonkers not to. But
Yeah.
I've got to say, I mean, I know you will wrap up in a minute, but it really is the most fantastic country. It packs a punch for the size of the country. It packs a punch. Um, you know like tiny weeny chilies that you can buy and you put on your food. They're often the hottest ones. It's a bit like that. Costa Rica is like a tiny country that's just packs the biggest punch of everything. Whether you want to do a tailor-made holiday or whether you're on a group trip, or whether you're on a fly-in safari in inverted commas, it packs a punch like nowhere else. It's brilliant. I wish I'd gone 20 years ago. I'd have been many times since if I had.
I wish we could end it on that note because
But we can't,
actually
can
the
we?
packed punch
You want me
is
to do that?
superb. But what I am going to ask you is, well, no, I can answer this actually. Peter has just asked about group sizes.
Yeah.
On our regular group trips to Costa Rica, of which we have quite a few, as mentioned, you're looking at around 8 people maximum. Group size for our festival is going to be maximum 50. So we're taking out the lodge in its entirety in the Osa Peninsula, and therefore, yes, that is your answer, Peter. There'll be a maximum of 50 people. We'll all split up. Some people going off whale watching, snorkeling, rainforest walks, relaxing, workshops, etc. So you know, it's you know, the festivals. It's all about just dabbling your hand into all sorts of stuff. 1 minute you're sculpting, the next minute you're photographing, the next minute you're coming out, you know, going bananas at you know, what's underneath the ocean with me and all sorts. So yes, fabulous.
There's so much to do there as well. From the lodge, I mean, well, there'll be 7 of us, 7 in our team, and there's a fantastic guide team there, and there is just so much to do. We're just not there for long enough, but you know, it is what it is. Yeah, and anyway, there's plenty of us to go round. It will be.
We do hope we'll be able to offer extensions as we normally do.
Oh yeah.
So some of them, you know, perhaps it will be turtle watching, perhaps it will be to the cloud forest. You know, those will be released in due course. But for the time being, we have our festival itself, and you can, of course, do your own extensions to that. If you wish to join us, then, you know, the world's your oyster, really. And
self-drive extension, fly back up to San Jose, pick up, or somewhere else for that matter, pick up a car and do a self-drive extension.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, this is a country that has conservation at its forefront. I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that has the conservation credentials of Costa Rica.
No, I agree.
1/3 of the country is, you know, protected. It doesn't have an army. It plows money back into conservation and looking after its own and looking after itself. I just think, what's not to love, really? 1,000 kilometers of Pacific coastline, the Pacific, you know, the Caribbean, the Highlands, some of the best birding lodges in the world. I mean, crikey. All right, shut up now. Okay.
I wasn't going to say that.
I'm going to be. I'm getting a bit excited about La Pura Vida. Right. Okay. So, thank you, Chris. We'll put a wrap on Costa Rica. What I will just tell all of you lovely people before you depart for a well-deserved glass of wine is that you can join us on the 18th of March to learn more about Colombia. Now, there is a birding destination, if ever I heard one, but they've got Paddington and they've got jaguars. They've got much more besides. And also, I'm back again. Apologies. On the 25th of March, I'll be introducing the lovely Mr. Ben Sutcliffe. You employed me. It's your fault. On the 25th of March, he'll be talking to you about Zambia. In the meantime, we have a brand spanking new, hot off the press photographic tours brochure. It was literally released in the last week. So if you want to have a look behind those penguins on the cover, then please do get in touch with us, go through the brochures, give us a call, give us an email. You know what we're like. We live and breathe wildlife. We are all complete and utter nerds. Get in touch. So in the meantime, I think all that remains is for me to say it's good night from him.
And it's good night from me.
Thank you. Okay. Good night, everybody.
I've heard from that for a long time. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.